Thank you for viewing this presentation from the Tennessee Department of Revenue for franchise and excise tax exemptions. This presentation is on family-owned non-corporate entities, or FONCE exemptions. In order to qualify for a FONCE or family-owned exemption, you must meet the requirements contained in Tennessee Code Annotated Section 67-4-2008. In order to qualify for the FONCE exemption, your entity must meet these following criteria. You must be a limited partnership, LLP or LLC. At least 95% of your ownership units of the entity must be owned by members of the family. At least 2/3 of the entity's activities must be in either forming or holding one or more personal residences where one or more members or partners reside, or where substantially all of your activity in the entity is either in the production of passive investment income or the combination or production of passive investment income and farming. Family-owned or FONCE exemptions must meet the 95% ownership test. So at least 95% of the ownership units of the entity must be owned by members of the family. With respect to individuals, this would include ancestors of the individual. It will also include the spouse or former spouse of such individuals. Lineal descendants of these individuals are included as well, which would include the individual's spouse or former spouse or a parent of such individuals. The spouse or former spouse of any lineal descendant would be included as well. Estates or trust of a deceased individual who while living was described in the code section shown here, and legally adopted children of individuals are treated as the child of such individuals for the purpose of this test as well. To determine the qualifications for the FONCE exemption, you must also consider passive investment income and what this means to your entity. Passive investment income is gross receipts derived from royalties, rents from residential property or farm property, dividends, interest, annuities, or any gains from the sales or exchanges of stock or securities to the extent that there are any gains on those. Rental property is defined as rents relative to passive investment income, and this was revised back in 2009 to include only rental income from residential or farm property. Additionally, ownership units that are held in trust are not treated as owned by members of the family unless the ownership units are part of the trust that is part of the estate of a deceased person. Farm property and residential property have the same meaning as it relates to the FONCE exemption, except that residential property includes only property leased or rented for residential purposes, and includes not more than 4 residential units at any one location. For farm property, you must also consider any acreage used for recreational purposes. However, farm property does not include acreage used for these recreational purposes by clubs, including golf courses and making hole improvements to the golf course. In order to claim the FONCE exemption, you must file an application for exemption on Form FAE 183, Application for Exemption and Annual Exemption Renewal, and meet all of the qualifications in order to be exempted. If your entity does not meet the requirements in any given year, your entity is taxable on all of your activities for that year. For any year that an entity does not meet the exemption requirements, a completed franchise and excise tax return must be filed electronically with payment of any taxes due by the 15th day of the 4th month following the close of the tax year. Both the initial application itself and the annual renewal are filed on Form FAE 183. All the appropriate sections must be completed on this form and submitted by the 15th day of the 4th month following the close of your entity's tax year. Entities requesting an extension for federal income tax are granted an extension for this purpose automatically. You must submit the Form FAE 183 renewal each year to be eligible for the exemption. For more information about the FONCE exemption, please consult these resources, including the application for exemption Form FAE 183 and its instructions, the Franchise and Excise Tax Return, and Tennessee Code Annotated Section 67-4-2008. For additional assistance, you may also visit us at www.tn.gov/revenue and click on Taxes, then Franchise and Excise Taxes. You may also submit an email through the questions section from Revenue's website, or you may call us at 615-253-0700 from 8 to 4:30 Central Time, Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. Thank you for viewing this presentation from the Tennessee Department of Revenue.